Supporting people in the community. Chapter 1. People with Disabilities. Here's what we will cover in Chapter 1. Explain when disability occurs and what may cause it. Recognize that people who share the same disability label are still unique individuals. Explain how people without disability and with disabilities have similar needs. Explain how to provide active support and why this is important. And explain the positive and negative implication of labels. Which person is more interesting? An adult man has a condition known as cerebral palsy. Because of this cerebral palsy, he uses a wheelchair, has an intellectual disability, does not use speech to communicate, and has a variety of health issues. Or would you rather work with a 28-year-old man, is a dedicated Twins fan, he listens to all the games on the radio, he is very active on social media, he comes from a large family and loves to celebrate holidays with his parents and sisters. His goal is to travel to Minneapolis and visit the Mall of America. Who would you like to work with? Would it surprise you to know that these descriptions are the same person? It all depends on who you ask. If you ask a program coordinator, they'll probably explain the person what their diagnoses are, what he is able to do. Or if you talk to a DSP, they'll probably explain that what he likes and don't like, what his hobbies are, what he loves to do in his spare time. So when we define people by his or her disability or label, it suggests that the person does not have a full range of physical characteristics or personality traits. We may overlook the many roles that the person has: son, brother, grandson, employee, neighbor, friend, and etc. We focus on the deficit rather than the strength and capabilities. People with the same disability label do not always have the same characteristics, personalities, and challenges. They have the same human needs. Everybody needs to have attention, love, affection, and companionship. People with disabilities are unique individuals, and like everyone else, they also have basic human and social needs that must be met. They have goals, dreams, and potential. We are all alike, then different. As you can see, this table has both positive and negative effects. The label was developed for medical description and used by people in medical, educational, and employment and social settings to determine if the person is eligible to receive services and support. So labels out there, some people, it can be neutral, positive, and negative. For example, if I was wearing an NDSU Bison t-shirt, I could wear this and drive around the state of North Dakota. Everybody will probably think I'm neutral. Positive, maybe. Neutral. But if I wear my Bison shirt in Fargo, they'll probably say, hey, go Bison, way to go. But if I drove down I-29 and head down to Grand Forks, to the Hawks football game, that would be negative because they probably wouldn't accept that. So it's all because of that one label. So originally provided to the labels were originally provided for medical description of different levels of disability. As soon as a person is diagnosed with a disability, he or she receives a label. These labels were never intended to be used as an insult against people or to affect people negatively. The labels just were originally developed to provide medical description of different levels or types of disability. So the advantages are establishing eligibility for services. Services are means of funding and providing support. Promote efficient communication among professionals. And focusing on the research effort on specific disability conditions. We're looking at the negative. It can provide lower expectation. So label can cause others, family members, teachers, healthcare providers, employers, or peers to have lower expectation of people who have disability. And if others do not believe in the person's ability, he or she may not either. So this can create a cycle which ultimately set the person up for failure. Low self-esteem. People with disabilities may feel as they cannot do well because of their label. So they end up having a very low self-esteem. Exclusion. When a person's disability label causes him or her to be seen as different, others may think they have the right to exclude people with that label. So this may cause a person to become very isolated or withdrawn. Negative belief, attitude, and discrimination. So sometimes, for example, some people might think that all people with mental illness are violent. When people in society believe certain stereotypes are related to specific disabilities, people who have that particular condition are often stigmatized and discriminated against. And then disrespect. As being labeled, people with disability are often devalued in society because they are seen less valuable. People who do not have disabilities frequently treat people with disability disrespectfully. So it can have a negative effect on a lot of people once they find out they have a label. So they don't do so well, and so they feel like they're separated. The role of DSP, supporting people with disability to reach personal goals. As a DSP, you are responsible to support people to lead self-directed life, engage in meaningful activities, reach personal goals, working as part of the team to remove barriers and increase skills. So, as a DSP, your responsibility is to serve as a teacher. Formal plans for helping people learn are included in the person-centered plan for each person supported, and part of your job is to help people learn by carrying out these teaching plans and documenting the results. However, remember that most learning takes place in informal settings, daily conversation and interaction, looking for everyday opportunities to help people learn and grow throughout their daily activities and routine. Serving as a role model. Our individuals look up to you guys. Your action speaks louder than your words. It is not uncommon for people with disabilities to look up to people who provide daily support. Whether you intended it or not, you are teaching by your example. Staff members must be sensitive to this role by acting, speaking, and dressing appropriately. Providing active support. Working on goals typically does not take up most of the person's day. People with disability benefit from being actively engaged in all aspects of their daily life as well as in the community. Many people with developmental disabilities are not actively engaged in their own lives and can spend long periods of time doing nothing much at all. This contributes to learned helplessness, loneliness, depression, and loss of opportunity to gain experience and new skills. One of your most important roles will be to provide support to help people you serve be actively and consistently engaged in meaningful activity, no matter what the level of disability may be. Supporting decision making. The people you support may have difficulty making choices. Lack of experience, education, exposure may cause a person to rely on others to make decisions for them. Helping people make choices involves teaching assertiveness and decision-making skills. Such skills include thinking through choices and exploring options. While it may be difficult to support some decisions, people have the right to make decisions and at times learn valuable lessons from mistakes. Part of showing respect for the person is to listen to him or her and support their decision, even though you may not agree with them. However, choice must be balanced with reality, responsibility, and safety. For example, although we all have the right to make choices, no one has the right to make choices that hurt other people. Monitoring health and safety. Some people have fragile health. They have diabetes, seizures, other factors that may complicate their daily lives. You will need to know how to provide support to people with various medical conditions. If you have questions about the healthcare and medical management, request instructions from your supervisor. Acting as an advocate. An advocate or a friend is one who acts on behalf of someone who is not able to speak, act, or write for him or herself. In adult services, advocacy means assisting others to get their needs met, such as going with a person to the doctor. Ultimately, our goal is to support people to advocate for themselves. Staff should always ask people what they need, act on their requests, advocate on their behalf to get those needs met. And then being a change agent. It can be very challenging to support people in becoming actively engaged by working alone. Another important role you will have as a support provider is to work as a part of the team with a person to problem solve, identify solutions, and coordinate services so that he or she experiences the opportunity to grow and be engaged. As a support worker, familiar yourself with legislation that may impact your role as a staff, but also the people you support. So as a DSP, it is important that you listen and support even if you do not agree with the choices made by the people you support. In Peter Leedy's work titled Whose Life It Is Anyway, he points out that we need to have the power with the people, not over the people. So Leedy reminds us that as we go about our work of supporting and empowering people with disability, we need to keep asking the question, whose life is it anyway? Active support is helping people be actively, consistently, and meaningful engaged in their own lives regardless of their support need. Being engaged to do things, participate, spending time with others, and making decisions and making choices. Actively each day throughout the day whenever there's an opportunity. Consistently with approaches that provide enough structure and routine that people experience comfort, continuity, and have a better ability to be engaged. Meaningful in ways that increase competence and opportunities, help people be and stay connected to others socially, provide and enhance self-esteem, and are focused on needs, preference, and goals of the person. So you want to get people engaged. We don't do it for them. We have to get them engaged to have them independently make the supper, help them assist. Don't take over the job. Examples of active support is being engaged include doing things, participating, spending time with others, and making choices. When people with disabilities are engaged in meaningful ways, their ability and self-esteem will likely increase. Active support helps people to be engaged throughout each day. So how can you get someone engaged? We're going to move on to the next page. As you can see, there's a lot of pictures here where there's individuals doing things. You can see up in the left-hand corner, there's a lady holding the picture down so the individual can paint. And she's doing it all herself. In the middle top picture, they're cooking. And she's doing hand over hand where he's involved in preparing the food item. Look at that expression he has. He's pretty happy he's involved. In the top right-hand corner, the individual is following his grocery list, and it looks like there's a picture, so he must not be able to read very well. So the picture cues are which helped him get his grocery list. So he looked for that item in the store and put it in his cart. So we want to get them involved as much as possibly without doing the work for them. Same down in the left right-hand corner. He's holding the paper and probably verbally assisting him on how to write or advocate for himself or write a letter to the paper, things like that. In the middle is assist with exercising, educating them how to exercise, getting them engaged. In the lower left-hand corner, bowling. Instead of using the ramp, they're getting them involved with bowling completely, getting active. Active support, there's more pictures on this page. How do you get these individuals engaged in these areas? Grocery shopping. Well, you probably want to plan a menu for the week. Find out what their budget is. Go through the sales ad. And maybe go through the sales ad and plan the menu according to the sales ad. And stay within the budget. And if he has trouble reading, maybe you have to cut out the picture so he knows what he's looking for when he goes to the store. Going shopping for clothes. How do they know what size shirt they wear? What size pants they wear? Is it a large, medium, small? What size shoes do they wear? What do they need? Do they need a sweater? Dressy pants? Jeans? How much can they afford? Do they know how to read the label? How about bowling? When you go bowling, do they know what size shoes they wear? We can teach them to ask for those things. I wear a size 7 shoe. Can I get a pair of size 7 shoes? I like to bowl 2 games. Do they know how to set up the machine to put their names in to keep track of the score? Get them engaged to learn how to do that. How to pay for it. Get money out. How to arrange transportation. Those kind of things. Not just take them bowling. There's a lot more to it than shopping, grocery shopping, and bowling. So you got to think about a lot of that area. Do they want a heavy ball or a light ball? Chapter 2, this covers a brief history of disability services. This is what we will be covering in this chapter. Describe inhuman treatment people with disabilities experience in the past. Discuss the historical trends that describe treatment of people with developmental disabilities. Explain how attitude toward persons with disabilities have changed over the years. Describe the disinstitutionalization mandate. List key components of inclusive services and active support. Describe how the ARC lawsuit impacts the lives of people with intellectual disabilities in the state of North Dakota. Discuss the concept of self-determination and describe the social model of disability. Attitude set policies, society needs, and beliefs needed. In 1800 to 1850, first public education programs started, gradually changed to people unable to learn, lead to large institutions, concept of disability as an illness or disease. In 1890 to 1950, institutions served to protect society, form deviant. People lived in institutions, men and women separated, excluded from community, prohibited marriage and reproduction. 1950s research began to show negative effects. 1960 to 1980, parents and local communities began a movement to improve conditions. President John F. Kennedy launched a panel on mental retardation. Lawsuits began to be filed. Self-advocacy groups began People First. And then in 1990 on today, consumer-driven services with people having rights to direct their own lives, example, control their lives, reach goals they have set, take part fully in the world around them. 1981, the class action lawsuit, ARC of North Dakota, the landmark division for people to move to a lesser restrictive setting. As a result of this movement, hundreds of people living in the state institution at Grafton and Sandhaven were transferred to community-based programs. Sandhaven was closed, and the Grafton State School was considerably downsized. It's now called the Life Skills and Transition Center. As a result of this lawsuit, the community programs that were developed provide opportunities for people with disabilities to live within the community. They had apartments, they move into their own home, group home living arrangement. They got jobs with or without support. Overall, people are supported to live, work, and recreate within the community from which they were previously excluded. People are supported to develop relationship with family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. How did the deinstitutionalization movement positively affect the lives of people with disabilities? The community programs that were developed provide opportunities for people with disabilities to live within their communities. They were able to move into their apartment, in their own home, group home living arrangement. They got jobs with or without support. And overall, people are supported to live, work, and recreate within the community from which they were previously excluded. There are three social model categories of barriers. First one is environmental. That is, many settings are designed only for people who do not have disabilities. For example, a person who uses a wheelchair only has a handicap when the environment is not designed for people who use wheelchairs. For example, a receptionist desk at the clinic, gas doors, or customer service. Economics, learning, job skills, and accessible workplaces result in unemployment or underemployment. And then cultural encounters negative beliefs, exclusion and discrimination, attitudes, stereotypes, and prejudice to people with disabilities. A comparison of the medical versus social model of disability. The medical model versus the social model. The medical model is what the doctors look at. They look at the person who has a disability as faulty. They focus on the diagnosis. People are labeled. They focus on the impairment. They focus on the therapy to fix the person. Whereas social models, what we look at, society is faulty and the person is valued. They focus on the strengths and needs defined by self and others. Barriers are identified and solutions are developed. We focus on positive outcomes, and the list goes on. Key components of inclusive services include people with disabilities are offered services and support necessary to achieve their unique potential in the community. Teaching and support are provided in community settings. People with disabilities are provided the opportunity to give back as well as receive. Whenever possible, natural support are encouraged to develop relationships. Examples of natural support would be neighbors, friends, co-workers, other community members. People with disabilities are the primary decision makers about their own lives. So an example of inclusive services would be like people living in a group home receiving support to develop relationship with their neighbor and friend. So for example, some of the people here in Fargo, they would invite people in their neighborhood over for a barbecue, and that's been known to happen. They do this every year. They invite them over for a barbecue, have some pasta and chips and fruit and a beverage, and they just sit and socialize. So that's connecting with the community. And that's what we like to see with our people we support. Chapter 3, a positive value base. Objectives. Describe legal rights and guarantees through Constitution. Explain how legislation and court decisions impact the lives of people with disabilities. Discuss basic human rights of all people. Describe the developmental assumptions. Describe the principles of normalization, social role valorization, and social capital. Explain the dignity of risk. Describe people first language and identity first language. Describe how define a person based only on his or her disability. Blah, blah, blah. They estimate 1 in 5 Americans have a disability. Quality of life for people with disability is influenced by attitude and values of people who support them and society in general. This chapter will present key concepts that impact the views of people we support. Dignity and respect. The Council on Quality and Leadership, CQL, is an international accredited body that defines respect as more than the absence of negative comment or action. We show respect in ways we interact with people. You should treat people with disabilities with the same respect you would give to anyone. Your words and action, as well as the environment, should always promote human dignity. The confidentiality about sensitive issues is another way to show respect. Example, not discussing a person's negative behaviors in front of others, not correcting the person in public, etc. Before you act or say something, think about how you would want to be treated in the same situation. People first language versus identity first language. What is people first language? What you do is put the person before his or her disability. Example, she has autism. It describes what the person has instead of what the person is. People first language also describes what a person needs. Example, she uses a communication book instead of what her problem is. Example, she has a communication problem. Whereas identity first language, we put the disability first in the description. Example, a autistic person or hearing impaired person. A person with this preference often say the disability is part of who they are and they are proud of it. When writing about or discussing the people whom you support, do not mention the person's disability unless it's needed. Avoid stories about chronic illness or severe disabilities. Do not describe people with disabilities as superhuman. Do not sensationalize a disability. Avoid emotional words. Avoid rewording handicapable, mentally different. Focus on abilities instead of limitation. Focus on issues that affect the quality of life. Show people with disability as active participants in society. When writing about people first language, what will be the correct way to write it? looking at A and B, would it be correct to write assist people to get in the van or load the van? It would be assist people to get in the van. C or D, I'm feeding Lucy, or D, I'm assisting Lucy to eat. I'm assisting Lucy to eat. E or F, the people who live on Snow Owl Lane, or F, the individuals from the group home. The people who live on Snow Owl Lane. G or H, Diane uses large print reading material, or H, Diane has problems reading. It would be Diane used large print reading material. I or J, I'm washing Joyce's hair, or I'm assisting Joyce with washing her hair. It is actually I'm assisting Joyce with washing her hair. I hope you got those right. Which of these demonstrate respect for a person with disabilities? A, following confidentiality guidelines of your agency when sharing information. B, supporting decisions of people you support even if you do not agree with them. C, referring to people by their names and not their disability. You give up? It is. All of these demonstrate respect for a person with disabilities. Legal issues. All people deserve fairness under law to benefit from services provided to all citizens. Legal rights issues have an important impact on the quality of life for people with disabilities. Years ago, the rights of people with disabilities were almost totally ignored. This led to people with disabilities being sent to live in large, dehumanizing institutions, being excluded from society and denied human rights. Equal protection. It means that the government treats all of its citizens the same, no matter who you are, we're all treated equally. Due process. Rights cannot be denied except in rare circumstances, and then only when proper procedures are followed, meaning that every person has a right to be treated with fundamental fairness, life and liberty and property cannot be taken away except in very rare circumstances, then only when proper procedures have been followed. This guarantees and protects the individual's basic human rights. The Olmsted Decision 1999 means that rulings that require states to provide community-based services for people with intellectual disabilities. The American Disability Act, ADA of 1990. The ADA ensures the rights of people with disabilities and provides protection of civil rights in areas such as employment, transportation, public accommodation, state and local government, and telecommunication. Normalization means supporting people with disabilities to live as close to normal as possible. Supporting people with disabilities to access the typical patterns and conditions of everyday life. So like a regular group of guys will probably go out and play darts on Friday nights. A bunch of girls would go meet and do scrapbooking every Saturday morning. Or the men would join a bowling league on Tuesday night every week. Things that they normally do every week. That's normal. Social capital describes the relationship and trust that we have with other people, including our family, friends, neighbors, social group, and co-workers. It is a network of people who support others in achieving their goals. So maybe the individual would like to help out with a function. Or maybe one of the individuals want to have a potluck. Maybe the individual want to say, okay, this group home, 1348, is going to bring the hamburger. 903 is going to bring the hot dog. 821 is going to bring the bun for the hot dogs and the hamburgers. And Savvy Home is going to bring some pasta salad. The people living in the apartments will bring some bags of chips. Those things. We're all working together to support it and achieving that goal to get together and have a potluck and visit with one another. Or as you see in this picture, a farmer around here in this community, if a farmer during harvest season has a heart attack, he might end up in the hospital and the doctors say you will not be able to work on the farm for at least 6 months. So all the farmers hears about this. They all stop what they're doing and they go and help take that farmer that's sick, get all his crop off so he can rest and get well. While the women make lunch for all the farmers. So there's no money involved. It's all working, they're all working together to support that person. Social role valorization is using typical members of the community as a model to teach people with disabilities how to dress, behave, socialize, and live so that they have the positively valued by others and are able to accept the good things in life. Age appropriateness. Treating people with disability based on the chronological age instead of the developmental or mental age. So, for example, replacing children's coloring books with crayons, with paint and canvas for adult women who like to do art. Or if you have an individual that likes to hold a toy phone, maybe you could get rid of that toy phone and get them a burner phone and put some $25 on it and have a support statement to have them start using that and try to call his parents once a week or twice a week. So to make it more age appropriate. The goal is to create and support roles that are valued by society. And as a support person, your role is to assist people to speak up, take turns, and participate in activities. Which of the following examples are age appropriate? A. Assisting a person to explore hobbies, what other people of a similar age are doing. B. An adult man carrying a teddy bear to a doctor's appointment. C. A 40-year-old woman using crayons in a children's coloring book while attending church. Or D. A 45-year-old woman wearing a Hello Kitty t-shirt. The answer is A. Assisting a person to explore hobbies, what other people of a similar age are doing. Developmental assumption. This was put together by Mark Gold, a special ed professor in San Diego, California. He came up with this term, developmental assumption. If the conditions are right, Every person can learn and develop regardless of their age or level of disability. People with severe disabilities have more potential than you think. All people with disabilities should have the opportunity to live their life much like everyone else. Everyone can learn if we can figure out how to teach and support them. So you really have to get to know your individuals and find that groove. When is a good time to teach them? How do they learn? Do they need quiet room? Do they need to do it early in the morning or at night time? Those kind of things. But everybody can learn. You just got to give it time and find that groove. You got to get to know the person. Dignity of risk. Everyone should experience the freedom to make choices in life, even though some risk is involved. The risk we take allows us to learn from our mistakes and carries us further into the spirit of true community and family membership. With every risk, there's hope of success. With assistance, people with disabilities can and should face the risks associated with their daily lives. The possibility of success outweighs the fear of failure in a system of support that values every person. Some risks can be life-threatening, but most risks we take in our lives are not. So having an individual take a bus on their own to meet you at Target, that's the risk. Maybe having cooking, they're chopping up vegetables. We have to have them learn so they know how to properly hold the knife to cut vegetables. Walking, riding a bike somewhere. Those kind of things. Chapter 4, Effective Person-Centered Services. Objective. Describe the purpose of policy and procedures. Explain the CQL's personal outcome measures. Explain the role of protection and advocacy. Describe the Title 19 survey process and purpose. Explain DSP roles and related to accreditation and surveys of agency services. Explain the purpose and major function of DD program management services. Everybody watches us. The goal of monitoring services is to ensure that people receive the best possible quality of life. Our protection and advocacy, CQL, and Title 19. The policy is a statement. Procedures described to policies are carried out, reviewed and updated based on the new technology, regulations, service options, new ways to provide person-centered services. CQL. All North Dakota agencies must be accredited by the Council Quality Leadership, CQL. Personal outcome measures are a tool used to learn about and support individual choices and preferences. Monitoring services through personal interviews, visiting agencies, talking with staff members and others connected to the agency. CQL is an independent, not-for-profit organization offering best practices, advocacy, and quality of life measurement. Accreditation is based on a measurement of the quality of services. Periodically, CQL will visit with each agency to meet with people receiving services, family members, and staff to examine the outcomes of support and services in the lives of people with disabilities. CQL tools for accreditation include personal outcome measures to learn about and support individual choices and preferences. Personal outcome measures. Agencies use personal outcome measures to help ensure that people receiving services are choosing their own lifestyle, such as where they live and work, who their friends are, that they are safe, respected, and can set their own goals. The information the agencies learn from the person outcome assessment is used to plan, support, and determine the effectiveness of these supports. During accreditation, CQL facilitators use interviews to determine whether services and support are having the result or outcome that matters to each person receiving support. So you see on the right side, they'll ask these questions to the individuals. Are you safe? Do you have friends? Do you feel like you have rights? Do you pick out do you like your services? Do you like your doctor? So this is the kind of questions they like to ask. That's on the right side. And if they say yes to all of them, then they know that they're getting their needs met. So that's a good sign. Title 19. These people work with Intermediate Care Facility, ICF. Those, for example, are if you work in Fargo at 903, that's considered ICF. The ones in Wahpeton are 821, 348, and 1348 are examples of ICF. It is an intermediate care facility, ICF, for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They are funded through the Title 19 of the Social Security Act and Medicaid. ICF IDD designed to provide active treatment services to persons. Surveyors from the State Department of Health evaluate if the person's needs are being met by reviewing the person-centered plan. So these people pop in once a year. They don't tell you when they're coming. So it's really important to follow the regulations. The book is about 150 pages of all the requirements to follow the Title 19. It'll be things like having a garbage can with a lid on it and a foot pedal on there. Exit sign. The temperature of the water should be 98.7. And so on. So if you have any further questions on that, you can certainly talk with your RC or your supervisor about that. Home Community-Based Services, HCBS. Our guidelines indicate people receiving services and support must have full access to benefits of community living and receive support in the most integrated setting. And they also check on employment. When people are hired, we have to do a background check. They also check on the status of people's training to make sure they are current, making sure that people are licensed, making sure that people are taking the required modules. And then protection advocacy, P&A. Each state and territory has a system to advance human and legal rights of people with disabilities. Primary responsibilities in North Dakota is to address complaints of abuse and neglect of people with developmental disabilities and mental illness. Developmental Disability Management Services, DDPM. The DD Program Management Services are located in the 8 Human Service Centers in North Dakota. The single point of entry into the DD service delivery system. The program manager helps connect the person to the services. So when someone is interested in joining the agency, they need to meet with the DD program manager and fill out the paperwork to see if they qualify. Once they are qualified, they will sit down and go through the assessment, authorize payment, plan development, and so on. They'll show him all the openings that are at all the agencies, and the individual will have a choice of where they would like to live at. So. Chapter 5, Development and Intellectual Disabilities. Objectives. Explain the developmental disability and intellectual disabilities. Recognize important consideration for supporting people who have a variety of sensory disabilities. Describe general support for people with disabilities. Explain the role of the person-centered planning process and understand how the learning priorities are determined. Developmental and intellectual disabilities is a group of conditions that are due to impairment in learning, physical, language, or behavior areas. The characteristics that impact causes a severe chronic disability caused by mental or physical impairment or combination. It can occur before the age of 22, is likely to continue forever, results in functional limitation in 3 or more major life activities, reflects the person's need for a combination or a sequence of special interdisciplinary or generic care, treatment, or other services which are lifelong or extended duration. Intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disability impairment of general mental ability that impact adaptive functioning in 3 areas. Not every person with ID meets the criteria for DD, and not every person with DD has a condition of ID. The umbrella term that includes intellectual disability is the cognitive part of the brain. Intellectual refers to general mental capacities such as learning, reasoning, and problem solving. An IQ test score of around 70 or as high as 75 indicates a significant limitation in intellectual functioning. Intellectual disability. There are 3 domains. One is conceptual domain. This includes skills in language, reading, writing, math, reasoning, knowledge, and memory. The second one is social domain. Refers to empathy, social judgment, interpersonal communication, ability to make and retain friendship, and similar concepts. Third one is practical domain of self-management in areas such as personal care, job responsibilities, money management, recreation, and organization tasks. So example of these would be like includes language, money and time concepts, interpersonal skills, ability to avoid being victimized, and activities of daily living such as personal care. Causes of disability. Prenatal disability occurs before birth in the womb. Perinatal disability occurs during birth. Postnatal disability occurs anytime after birth. Some disabilities are obvious at birth, others are noticed later. Sometimes a disability is a single issue. Other disabilities occurs as clusters of conditions, syndrome. Some disabilities are visibly noticeable, others are not. What is important to understand is how the different disabilities impact the person's ability to learn, function, and grow, and what support might be needed for the person to reach his or her personal goal and dream. Developmental disability can affect all people of socioeconomic levels. To elaborate on the DD causes, it can be affected by genetic chromosome abnormalities, could be a fragile X, one less chromosome, which can cause Down syndrome, birth complication, as I mentioned before, infection the baby has very early in life, meningitis and encephalitis, parental health and behavior during pregnancy, smoking, drinking, or drugs, infection the mother has during pregnancy. It could be syphilis or rubella, and then exposure to high levels of environment toxins. So if some people live in old houses, they might still have that old lead paint. Or maybe there'd be some chemicals, fertilizers sprayed around in the garden or farmland. Or maybe you're not washing off the fruit and vegetables that you buy from the grocery stores. They all have the chemicals on there. So that's some of the DD causes. Chapter 5, General Support. When supporting people with intellectual or developmental disability, keep the following tips in mind. When talking with the individuals, move to an area that is quiet and free from distraction as possible. Be prepared to repeat what you say orally or in writing, or use pictures. Place yourself at eye level with the person, establish eye contact, and face the person as you speak so they can watch your facial expression. Use gestures appropriate to the context. Use words that are easy to understand. For example, ask the person if they would like a can of pop or a Coke instead of using the word beverage. And the same thing for soda. Some people don't know what soda is around here. Emphasize your key words. Give directions one step at a time and keep checking for understanding before going on to the next step. Check for understanding by having the person state the information back to you or ask questions to check for understanding. Do not pretend to understand. Ask the person to repeat the message or ask questions if you do not understand. You can also ask another person for assistance if needed. Do not attempt to help by communicating for the person. Let the person speak for him or herself. Look for alternative methods. If you are not successful communicating with the person, ask if they have communication book or if they use sign language or if they have one of those electronic speech device or iPad. Be prepared to wait at least 15 to 20 seconds to give the person time to process what was said and then respond to it. Maybe even longer for some people. It is important to get to know each person what works for them. Always use age-appropriate communication skills. Consider your choice of words and your tone of voice. Be patient. Think how frustrating it might be to be limited to words and phrases selected for you and put into a communication book or voice output system. Use natural support when possible. This will help the person you support to be part of the community and to rely less on staff. Natural support includes coworkers, neighbors, friends, family, door workers, church members, and etc. Using natural opportunities throughout each day engage the person you support. When possible, teach in a naturally occurring situation to promote the person's ability to generalize learned skills to a variety of settings. With variety of people, skills that are taught in isolated training situations are usually not generalized to other situations. Person-centered planning, PCP. Each person receiving services has his or her own person-centered planning team. The person with disability has a key role in planning process. They meet at least yearly to review the services received by the person once a year. The team process is ongoing. The plan has goals, objectives, services, and support to help. Other members may be family, guardian, advocate, DSP, speech therapist, OT, PT, psychologist, social worker, teacher, and friend. The team members should tell the rest of the support team about the progress or difficulties they faced in carrying out the person-centered plan. Assessment to determine what the person enjoys and wishes to do, can already do. How best to support the person to achieve their dreams and goals. And DSP share in person-centered plan, team responsibilities, schedule meetings, implementation of the plan. What changes have occurred? How did the person respond? Is the communication and cooperation are needed for effective teamwork? In person-centered planning, we have to look at the personal goals. What does a person want to learn? What will the person have opportunities to practice? What does a person need to stay healthy and safe? What is a person likely to learn quickly? What would help a person to be more actively engaged in meaningful activities? What will improve the opportunity for community participation and relationship? Plus many more questions we could probably come up with. But these are some questions to think about when working with the individual. How can we improve their lives to meet the goals of their dream? Confidentiality is private information, need to know basis, share in private, respectful manner, and follow the guidelines of the policy in HIPAA. Learning. Some skills are more difficult and take longer. A combination to adaptation and support are used. Example, learning job duties. Some skills are not prioritized because the person will struggle for a long time. Support is design or adaptation. It put in place. Example, balancing checkbook would be one of them. Some of them would be taking a taxi to work or taking the bus to work, those kind of things. Partial participation. Completing some of the steps in the complex task or teach part of the task. Everyone is capable of completing some parts of any activity. What is an example of partial participation? For example, when I'm cooking with an individual, a person might not be able to perform every step in preparing a complicated recipe. However, there are many steps in the recipe that the person could do independently. Other steps could be completed with assistance or be completed by staff. So with liquid measuring cups, I might take a fingernail polish so it's easier to read, maybe put 1 cup, 3/4 cup, 1/2 cup, 1/4 cup, so they can see it better, so they know how to measure and look for the line. Things like if they don't understand the direction on the box, maybe you should rewrite it out, cut out the box, tape it on the piece of paper, and line them up. Open container, empty box into saucepan, add water, put on stove, turn on medium high, those kind of things. But just getting people to do some of the tasks themselves. So looking at these pictures on here, the staff is helping the person fold laundry. Going fishing. I'm sure some of the individuals, they can fish, but they need help with putting the worm on. So they're all participation. Maybe they don't like to wash dishes, but they like to dry. So you could wash, but they could dry. Strategies that could be used to increase participation include adapted and prosthetic aid. For example, a person could use a ramp to roll the bowling ball down the lane if they cannot lift or carry or roll the ball on their own. Adapting activity materials. They could use extra large bingo cards, could be used for people who have difficulty seeing the smaller squares, or a specific square could be isolated to show the person where to place the dabber. Another example of adaptive material is a color coded to highlight what the person needs to do. Another area is sometimes you could use color stickers, like you could use for the rubbish sale. You could use those stickers that you put 25 cents on there, 50 cents on there. Well, you could do the same with electronics if the individual, to help the individual know how to hook up the machine every time. So you could use yellow sticker for the Nintendo, the red for the Game Boy, and maybe blue for the Wii game. And you can put where you should plug the cord into it in the game, and then put the same sticker color. So if you use blue for the Wii game, you'll put the sticker on the Wii game where the cord goes into, and then put the sticker on the TV where the cord goes into for the blue Wii game. So adapting rules. So in basketball, a two-handed dribble could be allowed. So if they want to play tennis or something, instead of having the ball drop once, you can let it drop twice. You could also change the order of for softball. If the guy in a wheelchair wants to play, he could hit the ball, but somebody could run to first base for him. And then changing the skill sequence, a person could change into the swimsuit at home and wear sweats over the top to go to the pool instead of changing in the locker room at the pool if dressing is difficult. So you can kind of use your judgment on what would be helpful or easier for that person to adapt in these kind of activities. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, getting the people engaged. Thank you.